Hello and welcome to a new Squirrel Views. In this episode we'll be looking at Dredd. Now as some background, I've been a fan of Judge Dredd ever since I was a kid, reading 2000 AD comic. Dredd was first introduced in only their second issue back in 1977. Since then he's been through many classic storylines. My favourite is the Apocalypse War, with a full-on, war between Mega City 1 and Sov City, the Soviet Union version of Mega City 1. But he became an incredibly iconic figure, and eventually leading to his own separate comic book of Judge Dredd magazine. Obviously the mega instead of magazine because of the Mega City 1. There is a number of places that you don't, and many people who haven't read the comic aren't aware of, but most are aware of Mega City 1 and the cursed earth desert landscape beyond the city walls. But there is also a Mega City 2, a second one in there, based in America, as well as Texas City, Texas State City. As I mentioned, the Soviet one. There was also a Brit City, which was basically an expanded urban London, whose most well-known judge was Detective Judge Armitage. But yes, I was even a subscriber to Judge Dredd magazine at one point, and in 1995, nearly 20 years after the character first appeared, the fact that we were going to get Judge Dredd on the big screen for the first time was exciting. And they had a piece in Judge Dredd magazine, including behind the scenes photographs, on-set interviews and everything. Now, according to that, Stallone, who had actually been selected to play Judge Dredd, had a wagon full of the comics so he could read them to actually know the character, because it turned out that Stallone, as well as the makers of the film, had no idea about the character really or the setting, and it claimed in the magazine article that Stallone insisted that he wasn't going to take his helmet off after reading the comics and understanding the character. Of course, this turned out to be complete bollocks. There was a lot of problems with the 1995 film. The first one being the actual selection of Stallone. No offence to him as an actor. I enjoyed the Rocky films, the first three. I wasn't a big fan of Rambo, but it's just because it's not my kind of thing. But there was a grizzled detective thing he had in the 80s, a film called Cobra, and I actually enjoyed that. But it was the fact that by the mid-90s he was a huge star. He was at the top of his career, and so if he was going to appear in the film, obviously you were going to see his face. The makers of the film, or the studio behind making of the film, aren't going to be spending huge amounts of money to actually get Stallone if you don't see Stallone. But that was only one problem, and there was so many others. The stupid comic relief sidekick, which really didn't work, didn't fit in the actual environment, and the whole look of Mega City 1, to be honest, because I mean I don't know if it's just a typical American view of this glossy future cityscapes. It just doesn't work for Mega City 1. I mean, the whole concept was that it was run down and grungy, and there was gangs. I mean, it's the actual mega blocks, the huge apartment blocks filled with whole communities inside one building. It isn't a new idea. I mean, the idea of the mega blocks in the comic was only an advancement on the kind of idea of the tenement buildings they used to have in Scotland or even in Europe, and even in places like New York they've had tenement buildings. And so the mega blocks is just an expansion of that idea, where you've got entire communities in these blocks. You have your own, little stores, so they don't even have to go outside the buildings. And then you've got the fact that, med centres or anything can be inside the buildings. So it wasn't a new idea, but it was supposed to be run down and grungy and gang warfare everywhere. But you didn't get that in the 1995 film. It was just this very polished, glossy, very American view of a futuristic city. And yes, they tried to actually crowbar in as many fan references as possible, with an ABC warrior appearing in it, and the Angel Gang, and obviously including Mean Machine. But it didn't do enough to actually, repair the fundamental issues of the film. And so, for a long time, that was it. I mean, in the magazine, the letters that came out after the film, with fans just saying how crap the film was and how awful it was. It wasn't the comic vision of Mega City 1, wasn't the comic vision of Judge Dredd. There is even calls for actually ridiculous ideas like Jimmy Hill, the ex-footballer and sports commentator, to actually play, it would have been better Dredd, or Bruce Forsyth would have been a better Dredd than Stallone, because at least they've got the Dredd chin. But that's how far it got. It was just awful. It was just basically actually American studio seeing something that was quite popular and thinking, oh, we could do a film on that, and just not actually finding the heart of the actual series at all. I mean, like I said, I was a big fan of Judge Dredd, still am, and also lifelong Batman fan as well. So I mean, when they had the crossover of, the first one, Judgment on Gotham, where you got the crossover between Batman and Judge Dredd, that was fantastic as far as I was concerned. Had a couple of sequels which weren't as good, but so yeah, I mean, Judge Dredd was still popular and still going as far as the comics were concerned, especially at least in the UK. The big film the disappointing big film outing that fans had waited like so long for, didn't destroy things as they were. Everything continued as normal. Then out of the blue, suddenly they were making another one. We get told about Dredd. And the fact that they've had to call it Dredd instead of Judge Dredd, because the 1995 film was called Judge Dredd, and they had to drop the judge to actually avoid any connections to that. And this time it was more of a realised image of Mega City 1. you've still got those same elements of the mega blocks and everything, and the Hall of Justice and the judges, but it's almost like you could call it like a year one, not a year one for Dredd himself, but where the idea of the mega blocks is very similar to buildings that exist today and communities that exist today especially in places like the Central and South America. You sort of the modern version of the old tenement buildings, and it's just taken into the next step where the whole communities, including shops and med centres and everything, are all within these blocks. And so it works as a realistic, vision. And then you get the awesome Carl Urban, who plays the character perfectly. I mean, he doesn't take his helmet off throughout the entire film. He obviously understood the character, and everything about it was perfect. Lena Headey as Mama was fucking scary to be at points. You could actually you believed that she could actually take over a block, and the gang, her gang controlling the entire block. It was so believable, and she was a real scary bitch. Then actually having the introduction of the character of Judge Anderson, who is from the comics, and has had her own line of comics and so forth. Olivia Thirlby does a great job. I think the way they actually, I haven't seen the 3D version. I'd love to see the 3D version, because there is elements, especially sort of the slow-mo stuff, and Anderson using her psychic abilities and everything. Those scenes, I can imagine those look fantastic in 3D. But it was fantastic. The plot where you've got the corrupt judges, Lex, Alvarez, Chan and Kaplan, they were played very well, and the way each of them was dispatched was really good. The fact that they didn't hold back on the gore and blood effects and everything, it was Dredd as it's supposed to be. The only real problem was because there was still an American studio involvement. When it came to actually America, they had no idea how to actually market it, and their marketing in America and in a lot of places was just crap, and it ended up not well at the actual box office. It actually picked up a lot more when it actually came to physical media release, the DVDs and Blu-rays, and in Britain it done well because Dredd is a British character. He's an American character, but he was a British-made character. In 2008 he was a British comic. But the fact you've got Urban actually, all the classic lines, Judgment Time and I Am the Law and stuff like that. When you got Stallone doing it, his slur actually, when it worked as Rocky, Adrian, but him doing it as Dredd, I Am the Law, just didn't really work. It was just, Stallone slurring his way through the words I am the law, shouting it like words, and it just didn't feel like Dredd. But Carl Urban just nailed the character perfectly. So I mean, what can I say? What more can I say? I mean, to me, Dredd is, as a Judge Dredd fan, it was the perfect film, and only because of how badly marketed it was by the studio that actually made it, we haven't had a sequel, and it so deserves a sequel. I mean, the fact that Carl Urban's been more than up for it to actually make a sequel, and there's been a lot of talk about actually making a sequel. There's you can buy a novel which is based on the actual script for the sequel that was supposed to be going to be made at some point. But at the same time, you've got then it gets turned into a possible TV script, and then it's a possible Mega City 1 TV script, and it's just been stuck in production hell ever since. And it's a real shame, because it's an awesome film. Carl Urban is perfect, and we should get a sequel. Judge Dredd fans deserve a sequel. The film deserves a sequel. You just need people working for that studio who understand the character and that know how to fucking market it properly. So there we go. There's my review on Dredd, which is, if you haven't seen it, why not? It's a fantastic it's a fantastic film. Has the true, proper, gritty feel, and even actually a gritty, realistic version of Mega City 1. Everything you need to know about the world is presented by a Carl Urban Dredd voiceover at the beginning, explaining about the cursed earth, explaining about mega cities, mega blocks and everything, the Hall of Justice and judges, judge, jury and execution all roll into one. And yeah, if you haven't seen it, go and see it. Get it, it's fantastic. And it is one of my all-time favourite films. So until next Squirrel Views, this is Detective Squirrel out.